Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to my colleague and growing good friend, Stephanie Barnes, all the way from Berlin.
Yes, hi, Glenn.
Hi, Stephanie. And I say all the way from Berlin because I'm speaking to you from a very wet and rainy South Wales. And this will eventually be broadcast or available for all students on our MBA in Sustainability Leadership, particularly this module, which is the Lead in Sustainability Change module, and that will be available to all our students who study in many countries all over the world in different time zones. So the hope is that this recording and the one I've done recently with my other colleague and friend, Stephanie Barnes indeed, Kevin Watson and Felicity Healy-Benson, my colleague in the business school, they'll be available to you at a time that's convenient to you, 24/7 really. Okay. So I'd first like to introduce to you Stephanie Barnes, and I'm going to let Stephanie talk about herself because I'm sure she can do that much better than I can.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm not sure. We'll see how I do. So yeah, my name's Stephanie Barnes. I come from Canada, but I'm living in Berlin for the last 4 years. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting of all things and an MBA in IT. And most exciting part, I'm an artist. So I started painting, I started creativity practice around 2000 or 2001, and I started painting in 2011. And that's kind of when I said, oh, I got to do more of this, and started bringing it into my consulting practice. I've been self-employed as a knowledge management consultant for 16 years, just over 16 years. So yes, doing creativity is about the last thing anybody expects when I go in to do a knowledge management, requirements analysis or strategy workshop. But it's good fun. We have good fun and come up with all kinds of wonderful solutions. So, yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie. And a little bit about myself, for those of you who are coming across me for the first time. Well, Glenn has had a wide range of careers, from a steelworker to a policeman to a full-time parent when my children were little, running my own business, working for the government, running the government department in the UK, and lecturing and facilitating consulting. And a couple of things I have in common with Stephanie are an interest and a past career in IT. And also, if you'd suggested to me some time ago that I myself would be incorporating creativity and art and music into my lessons at both undergrad and master's level on a business management leadership course, I would have looked at you as if you were rather strange. But rather like Stephanie, I've been using these various tools myself, and we both have an interest in a very interesting person we've come across via the internet, certainly for me, a Linda Neyman, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And I'd recommend any of our students have a look at Linda Neyman, or contact me if you want to be sure you can find her on the internet. She's very interested in her approach to seeing the linkage between creativity and business opportunities. Okay, well, a little bit more about me. My first degree is in business information technology, and my master's degree is in a master's business administration. That's probably enough about me, I think. So I'm going to open up, because I know Stephanie has lots of fascinating ideas, quite, to me, slightly different ideas on creativity and sustainability. So I'm going to open up by asking Stephanie what sustainability might mean to her.
Well, I think there's at least two aspects of it come to mind for me. Sustainability on a personal level, on what we as an individual is sustainable for us, whether we're talking about just basic things about food and sleep and water and getting enough of those things so that we're taking good care of ourselves, and then again, still on an individual level, making the decisions of where we get those things and how they're sourced. But also on an organizational or corporate level, and sustainability and the organizations that we may work with, and helping them make those same kinds of decisions in their processes and their sourcing, and making the right decisions for long term, not necessarily getting caught up in what's quick and easy, because quick and easy is often dirty and not the right choice. But yeah, so taking a longer term view.
That's really interesting, Stephanie, because I think some of what you have said touches directly on the next point I was going to take us to, about what it might mean, what sustainability might mean for businesses, organizations. And I'm very much drawn to your idea of the longer term and sustainability in its wider sense, whereas perhaps in society we have been rather too focused on the now and the immediacy of, I'm going to call those old mindsets, or perhaps making a profit, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting. The corporate angle of it is interesting. As I mentioned, I have this undergrad in accounting, and when I took that 30 years ago, we talked about having to return the plant or the office building or the whatever, the gas station, whatever, back to its natural form, the way that we found it. So cleaning up any environmental damage and all of those things. So for the longest time, when I was first in working in accounting, I assumed that, because that's the generally accepted accounting principle that I learned, that organizations actually did that. But they don't, at least not the way we were taught in school. And I think that this is a real problem. And that's how we end up with these cheap goods, and people not being paid appropriate wages, and because we don't want to pay for what it would really cost, to return that gas station to, the field or the forest that it was before, or, so yeah, I think we have organizations have fallen down on that and said, oh, it's too difficult, we're not going to do it. And it is difficult, but that's not a reason not to do it.
I really like that. And I can see the direct linkage between how the mindset of how organizations may look at that, which is quite understandable, and the mindset of how we as individuals might look at that, which I'm certainly, I'll acknowledge, I'm familiar with myself and guilty as charged. Even though we are becoming increasingly aware of the benefits of being more sustainable, we are all tempted by the immediacy of the now and what is convenient. And as Peter Drucker, who's one of my favorite experts, has said, and I'm paraphrasing here, organizations consist of people. People have relationships, and it's the quality of those relationships which determine the success of the organization, rather like the fit of a jigsaw. So if we as individuals feel or realize that we should be doing the right or good things, but are driven by the easy things, the immediacies, then it's not surprising that when we as individuals are working together in organizations, very much the same attitude is going to prevail.
Yeah. Nobody wants to do what's hard. Everybody wants to eat the cheeseburger, today because it tastes so good, rather than the salad or, the something healthier choice, thinking, oh, I'm going to live. They're not sure, maybe living to 100 if they have to eat salad every day is not, is worth chopping a few years off of your life if you can have a burger every day instead, right? So
right. So our background, our shared background and interest in IT leads me nicely. It tempts me into asking this question or posing this question. I wonder if you might think that technology may have driven us forward so quickly that we're not really considering sustainability.
I think, yes, to a certain extent, I think so. I think it's certainly fed into that faster now, what matters now. I think, though, on the other hand, part of what I hear when people talking about sustainability is the rare metals and things that are being used to create, the laptops, that we're running this program on, and our phones and things, and realizing that having to create this number of products every 2 years, because that's, people are replacing them every 2 years, is maybe not sustainable. That keeping them longer and making them last longer, doing things that make them more recyclable is actually a better way to go. So I think I think it's done both things, or has potential.
I'm wondering out loud, and nothing springs to mind in terms of a good answer at the moment, how we as a society, a very complex society across the world, how we can possibly seek to influence big business to consider, at least, if not step away from, to consider the longer term view. And I don't think, in fairness to you, I don't think that's an answer that any one of us can easily give. It's just something which occurs to me.
Yeah, well, I think coming together in groups and finding other like-minded people, like what Greta has done with the climate change, bringing people together and making things more visible so that we don't feel like we're the only ones out there. I think that's one way. I think on an individual level, I think tapping into and just becoming more aware of it is helpful. And as you're saying, organizations are made up of individuals. Well, so if all the individuals in that organization take a longer term view, then the organizations have a longer term view.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm optimistic by nature. The glass is always half full for me, so I'm hopeful for the best.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Okay. Now I know, Stephanie, because obviously we've talked about our ideas before we were recording this session. I know that for me, you have very interesting views in how we might approach sustainability, and that you are very interested in creativity in this context. I also know that you've put together some very interesting slide presentations recently, which I feel cover this very well. Would you like to say something about that?
Sure, and I'd be happy to share the slides with you if you want to share them with your students.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Steph.
You're welcome. So, yeah, where to start? Create sustainable leadership and being sustainable has a number of qualities and a number of characteristics that make it up. That long-term mindset that we were just talking about, and taking some reflection and being present in the present moment and these kinds of things. In the slides, you can see the whole list of things. I'm not going to try and rattle them off now off the top of my head. But so many of those things in that sustainable leadership list are also qualities that can be developed through an artistic practice and tapping into our inner creativity. This creativity that's got educated out of us through the education process, and trying to get the right marks, have our profs and our lecturers give us good marks and regurgitate back what they have said, and it sort of erases our creative mindset and things. So yeah, my thing is then to relearn that creativity, and that in the process of doing that, it gives us those things that make us more conscious as leaders and make more sustainable decisions.
That's great. And I was laughing to myself when you mentioned about creativity, and it's tended to have been educated out of us to some extent. It reminded me of a very funny YouTube video I saw some years ago, which I know is still available, so I'll find the link for our students, by Sir Kenneth Robinson in the UK.
Yes.
And
yeah.
He is so, for me, he is so focused on right, and I know that's only my view, and he's also very funny in the way he puts it. So I'll put that up for our students as well.
Yeah, that's a great video. I love that video too.
Yeah. And for me, Sir Ken has a fantastic ability to communicate what are potentially quite complex issues in a very clear way.
Yes, yeah, he does.
Okay, well, I've got a slightly a difficult question for you to possibly contemplate you, Stephanie. Do you feel there might be any good examples of leaders or organizations who are trying to make a difference in this field?
You're right. That is a hard question for me to come up with an individual, and I can't off the top of my head think of an individual. But what does come to mind is organizations that are focused on the triple bottom line, and doing that and being environmentally conscious and socially aware, and looking at more than just the financial aspect of it. And I think that any organization that is looking at the triple bottom line and doing work in that area is definitely worth taking a second look at, and looking at them as leaders in the field. And that's thankfully becoming a much more common thing these days.
Yeah, I'm very much with you on that, because one of the topics I teach is strategic management, either at final year undergrad or master's level. And the organizations which are addressing or seeking to address the triple bottom line always appeal to me, and it's something I highlight to my students.
Yeah, good.
Okay. I think I need a new pair of reading glasses, so bear with me a moment.
No
okay. This was a little bit of a thought dump for me. So take from it what you would like to comment on, Stephanie.
Okay.
I'm very much of the view that the idea of sustainable leadership is interconnected with everything else. Some examples are the sense of immediacy we have, the environment, societal aspects, mindfulness to emphasize the present. Sustainability emphasizes the future, perhaps. And perhaps there's something of a paradox between the now and the future.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be a balance between now and the future. Because if you don't pay attention to the now, you're not going to get to the future. But if you pay too much attention to the now, you're not going to have a future to get to. So we need to take a balanced approach, which is where things like mindfulness and presencing and those kinds of things, do lead to a sustainable future, because they cause us to stop and reflect and take a moment, instead of just rushing forward all the time and doing what's quick and easy, and gets us home earlier, gets us the answer faster. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a balance between that needs to be struck.
Okay. One thing which I think struck me from your presentation I've seen recently, and from other research I've done as well, is I very much like the focus on purpose, and purpose which I should include purpose beyond profit. Would you like to say something about that, Stephanie?
Oh, absolutely. Purpose is so important. And whether we're talking about, my painting, that's a work in progress on the other side of my studio, from where I'm sitting right now, and my paintings, I work on them over a period of time. Sometimes it's a few days, sometimes it's a few weeks, sometimes a few months. And when I leave it, especially the longer pieces, I always come back and go, what was I trying to do with this? What was the purpose of this? Why am I doing this? But it's the same with, the spreadsheet maybe that I'm working on for my taxes. My taxes. I got to put this over there and this over there, and I got to organize it in a particular way, or, so I think having clarity about why it is that we're doing things, whether it's cooking dinner or doing a spreadsheet or, whatever it is, having that clarity is really important and keeps us focused and should keep us focused on what's important. So that's at least.
Trying to take a longer term view for me, I think one of the key qualities that we are all going to need to hopefully develop and to draw upon is courage. Courage not to take the easy path. There's a lovely saying which I should have thought about before and I won't remember now, but it's easy, something along the lines of it's easy to do. No, I'm going to struggle to remember it now. I shall look this up afterwards and find it for my students.
Okay.
It's easy to do perhaps the wrong thing, and it's much harder to do the right thing. I'll find the better words than that.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Somebody much cleverer than me thought of that, and I've ruined that one, I think.
yeah, no worries.
Okay, so perhaps bringing our chat to a close, it seems that we both tend to feel that there is no easy solution. And we're dealing very much with complexity, which always interests me, and I'm sure you.
Yes.
I sense that awareness is increasing, but, and then I'm pausing deliberately.
Yeah.
And I think in order for there to be a meaningful change, each one of us has to accept responsibility for what is important to us, or to put it another way, what gets us up in the morning. Because it's not just about us, it's about our families, our children, and moving on, hopefully, into the future.
Yes. Yes. Well, and what you said there at the start of that, your last question about complexity, was complexity?
Yes, yes.
And when you said it, I thought, oh, but that's why I call myself, my title for my business is Chief Chaos Organizer. And I love that title, and I have had that title, and then I went away and called myself something else for a couple of years, and now I've come back to it again because it really speaks to me and what I do, but also I think to the broader, you know, situation that you described. And someone recently said to me, can you really manage chaos? And I'm like, absolutely, you can manage chaos. There's parts of it that can be organized, you know, like the books on my shelf. We can organize that, but then there's a part of it that you just need to accept it's how it is, and it's a constant balancing between current and long term, and you know what's easy now versus what's going to have a longer term beneficial impact. And so there's this balancing act, and there aren't any easy answers, except that there is, because that's the answer. It's a balancing act. It's not a yes or a no or a 1 or a 2 or a 0 or 1. Go back to basic binary coding. And but it's this balancing act. So it's constantly, it's like when you're I forget what they're called, those things in the gym that they balance the board on top of half a ball, and you can't just stay still. That's active balancing, and it's good for your core muscles, and good for balance, and good for all kinds of things. And I look at a lot of this, the complexity and sustainability, as the same kind of thing. That it's a balancing act, and that there's a middle road, and it's an equilibrium that we have to work at keeping all the time.
Something to share with you, Stephanie, and to share with our master students in this module is that we, my colleagues and I in the Carmarthen Business School, have brought in the last few years a new business approach to business management at both undergrad, particularly at undergrad, but also filtering heavily into our master's programs, an underlying or a theme of a core theme of sustainability written into the programs in all the modules. And I found it both interesting and interestingly challenging to develop that program with my colleagues, and challenging to facilitate the teaching of that to our students. And the wonderful thing is that students are flocking in numbers, and they are very much loving the program at both undergrad and master's level. So that suggests to me that there are many people out there who are willing to seek the change.
That's great. That's fantastic. And so much of that sustainability, I think, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, can be learned from tapping into our creativity and having an artistic practice, and taking those lessons from being creative and applying it in the management situation. It
would be great to find a way to get my online students to indulge in a little bit of painting in a creative context, because I enjoy doing that a physical residential weekend and sometimes in the classroom. But I'm not sure I could work that one out online.
You can actually, but and I've done stuff remotely, and I've done stuff from video. You can do like videos that they have to watch and do.
Maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Okay, I think that's a great note with a big question mark on it. Really interesting to close on. And can I thank you very much, Stephanie? It's been both interesting and fascinating, and for me also funny, the things we talked about. And one thing I've learned as I've become a little bit more mature and hopefully wiser in life, that if you enjoy your work and you have a bit of fun along the way, that makes such a difference.
Yes, yes, it does. And thank you for having me. This has been a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I'll let you close the recording now.
Thanks.